Hey everybody, welcome to the Conscious Love Show. Whether you are single, you are in a relationship, or you're healing a broken heart, this show is here to inspire you, to remind you how beautiful, lovable, and amazing you truly are, and to give you the practical tools and insights to navigate from wherever you are right now to the loving relationship that you so deeply want to have. My name is Shane Kohler. I'm a certified transformational coach and trainer with over a decade experience helping people release their trauma and open their hearts to love. I've delivered seminars all over the world, coached thousands of people through my online platforms and programs, and every week I'm coming straight to you with the hottest insights and the best teachers around, bringing you powerful resources and profound conversations to heal your relationship with love, dating, and yourself. I'm so grateful you're here, and if it's your first time, welcome. You can count on me to always show up for you with my very best and a commitment to learn and grow myself so I can serve you to my maximum ability. Thanks so much for tuning into the show. I've got some awesome things planned for you today. So without further ado, let's dive in. Okay, hello everybody. Hello, welcome back to another episode of the Conscious Love Show podcast. Shane Kohler with you. Pleasure to be on today. Look forward to diving in as always. Today's episode, we're talking about the essential qualities of a conscious woman. And I've been really looking forward to today's episode. I really enjoyed last week, if you were with me, we were talking about the essential qualities of a conscious man. And as I've been preparing for today's episode, I've been, kind of contrasting the two. And as I was designing these two episodes and like going over my notes and things, I was, looking at, okay, they're definitely different, right? Like the qualities of a conscious man are definitely different than the qualities of a conscious woman. And yet I asked myself why, right? Like, why are they different? Like, why wouldn't they be the same? Why wouldn't a conscious person be a conscious person? And so I've been thinking a lot about this and really, looking at the differences, looking at the similarities, and really, asking myself, like, why are they different? What causes that? And I've come up with really two primary things that distinguish the qualities of a conscious man from a conscious woman. One is that we have different wounds, and two is that we have different gifts. Right? So the fact that we have different wounds and the fact that we have different gifts make the essential qualities of a conscious woman or a conscious man a little bit different from each other. And I'll say there are a lot of similarities, and we're going to talk about all of that today. But one thing I also want to say too is that, maybe even more than saying the qualities of a conscious woman or the qualities of a conscious man, because I think to some degree, women can embody a lot of the qualities of a healthy man and vice versa. But I think what this is really about is the qualities of the healthy masculine and the qualities of the healthy feminine, right? And if you were raised in this world as a primarily masculine person, then you adopted some of the masculine wounds or a lot of the masculine wounds, and you developed a lot of the masculine gifts. And same if you were raised in this woman or if you're raised in this world as a primarily feminine person, then you adopted a lot of the feminine wounds, and you embraced or have access to a lot of the feminine gifts, right? And so any individual man or any individual woman could potentially have any kind of mix or match of all of these different things. But traditionally, if you identify as feminine or you identify as masculine and you grew up in this world with that identity, you have largely taken on a certain set of wounds as a result of that. And you also have a certain set of gifts that develop as being that kind of person. And so for simplicity's sake, we're going to generalize and we're going to say, the qualities of a healthy man or the qualities of a conscious woman. But I really do just want to say that, of course, the things we're going to talk about today are absolutely things that men can embody, things that men often do embody, things that men need to embody sometimes. And the things we talked about last week when we were talking about the qualities of a conscious man, right? Those are things that women access and embody at times and need to at times, right? So we're kind of simplifying this conversation. But what I'm really talking about in today's episode, as we explore the qualities of a conscious woman, is I'm talking about the strengths that a woman would need to develop in her life growing up with the cultural wounds of the feminine, right? In our world, there are certain wounds that women take on just by virtue of being a woman, just by virtue of being a feminine person in this world. There are certain cultural influences, certain things that she is subject to just because she's a woman. And so the qualities of a conscious woman are a direct result of the ways that she has adapted based on those wounds, the healthy ways that she has adapted. Now, there's definitely negative ways that she could adapt, right? She could hate herself. She could have no worth. She could have no intuition. She could have no authenticity. She could be a people pleaser, right? Like these are all the unhealthy versions of the feminine when she adapts to her wounds in an unhealthy way. But when she adapts to her wounds in a healthy way, there are 5 core qualities that we're going to talk about today that become her greatest gifts. Just to kind of give a general idea of what I'm talking about here. So the common wounds of the masculine are to, be emotionless, to be strong under all circumstances, to be powerful, to be dominant, to never show weakness, to never show vulnerability, to always be in control of situations, right? Like there's kind of this stereotypical wounded masculine that we experience. And last week when we talked about the qualities of the conscious man, we were talking about his ability to grow through and heal through those wounds and become a well-adjusted, emotionally available, conscious human being. Well, in this conversation, as we talk about the qualities of a conscious woman, the core wounds of the feminine are something like being treated as a second-class citizen, right? Her societal worth not being equal to that of a man. Now, please understand, I'm not saying that's true. I'm saying that's a cultural influence that has, historically been in place and in many countries is still in place, right? So her growing into her consciousness, her growing into her power is her growing up through the wound of being treated like she's somehow second to a man. And how does she adapt to that wound in a healthy way to become a conscious woman? That's what we're talking about today. She has been taught to seek external validation, to seek her worthiness in partnership or in relationships, right? She has been taught that her needs are not so important, but that she needs to make sure that men are taken care of, that she needs to make sure that men are happy, that she needs to make sure everyone around her is happy, right? She has been taught that her worthiness comes through people pleasing, through getting attention, through getting validation, through getting acceptance, right? These are a lot of the feminine wounds. And so as we talk about the essential qualities of a conscious woman today, we're talking about how a woman can adapt to these wounds in a healthy way to become conscious, to become empowered, to become authentic, to become fully self-expressed, to become certain of herself in her own right. I've often spoken about how the fundamental need for the feminine is safety, right? More than anything, women need to feel safe. And in her wounding, she's constantly looking outside of herself for safety, right? She's constantly looking to other people. If I make you feel comfortable, then I'll feel safe. If I make you happy, then I'll feel safe. If you think I'm worthy, then I'll feel safe, right? She's been trained to constantly place her security and her validation externally. Well, as she becomes more conscious, what she learns to develop is a sense of internal safety. And that's going to be a big part of what we're talking about today. And so these 5 qualities that I'm going to cover today when we're talking about the essential qualities of a conscious woman are the 5 ways that she has overcome her wounding and embraced her gifts. And I think the gifts of the feminine are also unique from the gifts of the masculine. And I'll just speak about that quickly before we really jump into this. And the gifts of the feminine come in her depth of intuition and spiritual connection, right? Like I've often said, the feminine guides the internal world and the masculine guides the external world, right? So the masculine is very connected to the physical world. The feminine is very connected to the spiritual world. And so part of the reason that the qualities of a conscious woman are different from the qualities of a conscious man is because she has a kind of spiritual leadership that the masculine, it's not that he can't develop that. Of course he can. Any person can develop it, but it's not as natural for him. The feminine is deeply connected to her spirituality. She has access to intuition on a level that men really have to work to develop, where it just comes naturally to her, right? And I mean, there's something in our society we all talk about called women's intuition. It's not an accident that that's something everybody knows about. Like it's obvious, right? Women are more intuitive. They're more spiritually connected. They're more cooperative, right? So women have a natural tendency towards, and I should say the feminine more than just saying all women, because women in their woundedness might not be like this. But the feminine has a natural inclination towards cooperation, towards inclusivity, right? Whereas the masculine is more independent. The masculine is more kind of like lone wolf. I'll do it on my own. I don't need to include everybody. I don't need to be a part. I don't need community. And of course, a lot of that can come from wounding. But so her gifts have a lot to do with her spiritual intuition, with her natural tendency towards inclusivity and cooperation, her natural ability to be loving and empathetic, right? I think men and the masculine has a way of being kind of isolated in their emotional experience, where the feminine can be very naturally empathetic, right? She just tunes into others' experiences. She knows what others are feeling. And so her gifts and her qualities are distinct because she has something unique to offer. And I think when we talk about a conscious partnership, or when we talk about a conscious world, what we're really looking at are the healthy qualities of the masculine and the healthy qualities of the feminine coming together and working in partnership with each other, because there are very unique gifts that we each have. There are very unique opportunities to serve that we each have. And so I want to jump into this conversation and really get into these 5 qualities that I'm going to speak about today. And the first one I want to touch on is self-love and worthiness. Self-love and worthiness. And this is a direct healing to the wounds that I've been speaking about, right? So the feminine wound, as I mentioned a little bit earlier, is unworthiness, right? To seek her worthiness externally, to seek her worthiness in a man, to seek her worthiness in being a mother, to seek her worthiness in her ability to make everybody happy, in her ability to people please, in her ability to pander to others' needs, right? This is what the feminine wound has been taught, is that her worthiness comes through taking care of everyone else. And so the first quality that I'm going to speak about of a conscious woman is embracing her own intrinsic value, embracing self-love and worthiness, regardless of whether she's in a relationship, regardless of whether she has children, regardless of whether people are happy with her, or she's getting approval, or she's getting acceptance, right? There's an internal strength that she gets to build. And sometimes in her life, having this internal strength, having this connection to her own self-love and her own worthiness requires her letting go of the approval that she might get from others. The cultural wound of the feminine and the way it's reinforced is people are constantly judging women if she does too much for herself. She's accused of being selfish. Right? If a woman puts too much focus on herself, the culture accuses her of being selfish. Why aren't you doing more for your kids? Why aren't you doing more for your husband? Why aren't you doing more for this or for that or for everyone else? Why aren't you making me happy? Right? A lot of unconscious men in relationship with women, and I know a lot of you ladies who are going to hear this have experienced this, is that you've been in relationships with men and they expected you to do everything for them. Hey, everybody. Thanks for listening today. I wanted to jump in real quick and share something that I'm really excited about. Beginning on October 15th, I'm going to be leading a live 8-week version of the Inspired Love program. For the last couple years, the program has only been available to my lifetime coaching circle members, and I am thrilled to be able to offer it again in this format. You can learn more in the show notes below where you're listening to this podcast. Space is limited, so make sure to check out the details now and grab your spot if you want to join. This is going to be a profound 8 weeks together, and I do not want you to miss it. So thanks for listening today, and I'll see you there. And so her willingness, and this is, I think it's an essential stage in a woman's growth and in her healing, is her willingness to let go of the need to make everyone else happy, to get everyone else's approval, and embrace her own intrinsic value. Regardless of, again, who her partner is or whether she has a partner, regardless of whether she has children or regardless of any of it, regardless of whether everyone around her is giving her the approval. And she embraces her own self-care. She honors her own needs. And again, this will often, especially if she's someone, and I see this a lot with the women I coach, where they've lived their whole lives people pleasing and pandering and taking care of everybody and making sure everyone was happy with them and never letting anyone down and never disappointing anyone. And then all of a sudden, maybe they come into coaching or maybe they go through some kind of life like nervous breakdown where they just can't handle it anymore. And they're like, I've got to start honoring myself. I've got to start prioritizing myself. And this can be a really difficult transition for her to go through, because as soon as she starts honoring herself, everyone around her starts going, what the fuck are you doing? And she's faced with all this judgment. A lot of times her own friends will judge her. A lot of times her partner will judge her. A lot of times her children will judge her. A lot of times her mother or her father will judge her. And for her to just simply put herself first and prioritize her own needs will often include an incredible backlash from the external world. Because she's been raised up in a certain culture that perpetuated this. And again, by no fault of her own, but she played into that culture. She was kind of forced to play into that for her own survival. And then she gets to a point in her 20s or her 30s or her 40s where she says, I just can't do this anymore. And as soon as she stops doing it, the whole world turns on her. A lot of times she realizes that all her friends were not really her friends. That she's been doing what she had to do to keep these people in her life as friends. And the moment she starts honoring herself, they all disappear. So prioritizing her self-love and her worthiness, embracing her value regardless of external validation, prioritizing her needs, prioritizing her self-care. Part of this, and I've been touching on it, but I haven't said it, is creating healthy boundaries. Right? So there's a level at which she says, no, I'm not going to do that for you anymore. No, I'm not going to take care of you anymore. I'm not going to be there for your every need anymore. She starts to have healthy boundaries. And I'm starting with this one today because I think this is really like all of the other qualities of a conscious woman snowball from this one. Right? They snowball from her ability to first honor herself, honor her needs, honor her worth, embrace her intrinsic value. And from here, all of the rest of them snowball. This is where she has to start. She has to break free from the cultural conditioning that says that her purpose is to serve everyone else and demand an equal spot at the table. Right? I deserve an equal seat at the table. It's not that she's better than everyone else, but she owns her equality. And that's the first one. The second quality I want to speak about is emotional intelligence. And this is something that I think, last week when I spoke about the qualities of a conscious man, I talked a lot about developing emotional awareness and emotional expression and emotional intelligence. And that's a direct result of healing a lot of the masculine wounds, right? Where the masculine wounds are, as I spoke about earlier, this kind of stoicism and strength and this unwilling to be emotionally available or emotionally expressive. But I think while a healthy quality of both the masculine and the feminine is a certain emotional intelligence and connection and awareness, I think the feminine she's gifted in this area because this is much more natural for her. It's much more available for her. Also, culturally, while she hasn't necessarily been taught a healthy relationship with her emotions, and that's something she often needs to learn on her healing journey, but culturally, the expression of feminine emotion is a lot more acceptable than the expression of masculine emotion. And so because of that, she may not have such a deep level of repression as a lot of men do. Now, what does this mean? It means that it's more available to her. It means that she'll be able to access and express it without needing to do as much work. It also means that she can be a leader in this regard. And a lot of women in partnership end up leading their men to their hearts, right? Her ability to express authentic emotion and hold space, hold like an empathetic space for other people's emotion, gives her partner a space in which he can feel comfortable expressing his emotion. And so, a couple of things I want to say here. First, she's attuned to her emotions. And when I talk about being attuned, and this is where I think everybody, men and women, we need a lot of work because we haven't been taught to handle our emotions in a powerful way. And I would say, the wounded masculine has a tendency to kind of shut down emotion and become unexpressive. And a lot of women have taken that on too. But the feminine wound is more like being powerless over emotion, is more like being derailed by emotion. So where the masculine would tend to just shut it down and disconnect, and I don't express, I don't acknowledge, I don't deal with, I just power through and be like a strong man. And I understand a lot of women have taken that approach as well. But the feminine wound is more about being disempowered by her emotions. And so when she becomes attuned to her emotions, and again, I think most women, and I'm being very general here, but I think most women have a shorter path to this than most men do. And in that sense, this can be a gift and she can be a leader in this regard. When she becomes attuned to her emotions, what she develops the ability to do is to really sit with her emotions in a powerful way. To allow the full, authentic expression of her emotional reality without repressing it, without holding it back, without hiding it, but also without being disempowered by it. And this is where it's like, if on the one extreme is repression and the other extreme is overwhelm, There's a balance point in the middle, which is the ability to sit with, the ability to be with, the ability to navigate through whatever emotional experience she might be having. The ability to really feel the emotion, right? And something when I work with my clients or in my program, something I often talk about is that there are really two extremes to emotion, and both of them are not really feeling the emotion. Both of them are not really processing the emotion. So whether you're repressing it or whether you're overwhelmed by it, in neither case are you really feeling the emotion. In neither case are you really processing it. On the repression extreme, you're stuffing it down, and on the overwhelm extreme, it's stuffing you down. But in both cases, you're kind of avoiding moving through it in a powerful way. And so when a woman becomes attuned to her emotions, she has the ability to be deeply in touch with her emotional world, to deeply feel whatever is real for her there, right? To move through all of the experiences, to feel it fully. As she moves through this and feels it fully, she also has the ability to express whatever needs to be expressed. And maybe that's a boundary. Maybe that's asking for something she needs. Maybe that's saying something that needs to be said. Maybe it's confronting a challenge in her life or calling something out that needs to be called out. But when the emotion is not being repressed and she's not being overwhelmed by it, she's able to move through it, to feel it fully, to find clarity in it, and then express what needs to be expressed as a result of that emotion. You see, she sees that her emotions, and this is part of the intuition and inner wisdom that I'm going to speak about later, but she sees that her emotions are wisdom. She sees that her emotions are information that have valuable insight for her. And it's not the kind of information that, you look it up on Google and you get an answer in 30 seconds, right? It's not that kind of information. It's the kind of information that she has to navigate through to find her truth, right? It's not as easy as looking it up on Google. She's got to kind of feel her way through it and find her truth. And I'm highlighting this as a quality of a conscious woman. And the reason I'm highlighting that is because I think women are naturally more attuned to do this kind of work. And women are actually leaders in this kind of work. Part of this is a capacity for empathy and compassion, which I talked about a little bit already. But her being empathetically attuned to her own emotion makes her attuned to other people's emotion. And this is how she has such a deep capacity to truly be a healer in this world. Right? She being attuned to her own emotions can create a space for others where they feel safe in their emotion. The healthy conscious feminine is actually a space in which all the repressed emotion of the world can start to be brought up, which is something that needs to happen for every human being on the planet, man or woman. Right? All this stuffed and stuck emotion that we've been so full of shame and have been unable to repress. Like, part of the healing of the world and the healing of us as individuals is starting to allow that to come up. And so the healthy conscious feminine is a space in which that can be brought up. And she becomes that space by first becoming attuned to her own emotion. Thanks for tuning in today. And if you enjoy the Conscious Love Show, there are a few things you can do with just a few seconds of your time that will really support us in being able to continue bringing these messages to you every single week, completely free of charge. The first thing you can do is give us a 5-star rating on one of the major podcast platforms. The two most popular for this show are Apple Podcasts and Spotify, but you can leave a rating on any platform where you listen to this podcast. And if you'd be willing to take just an extra moment, you can write a few words about the show and share with people how it's touched you and the difference it's made in your life. That will go a very long way in supporting our show. Possibly the biggest thing you can do to support the show is share it with someone that you know can benefit from it. If you get a lot out of it, it's very likely that a friend or loved one of yours will too. And I appreciate it so much when people share the show. If you wanted to take the extra step, you could post a link to today's show on your stories or socials and help get the word out in that way. If you'd be willing to take just one of these steps today, I would appreciate that so much. And I want to say thank you in advance for caring about the show and being willing to support it. Thanks again for listening today. Your presence here means everything to me, and I hope you continue joining me each week for many years to come. Lots of love, and let's get back to the show. Her ability to have a healthy and powerful relationship with her emotions, and to be a leader in that respect. The next one I want to touch on is authenticity and vulnerability. And this one, I think, is definitely healing through a lot of the feminine wounds, where the feminine has been taught that her voice doesn't matter. She has been taught that her role is to be in service to others, to be a mother, to be a caretaker, to be a wife, right? She has been taught that her voice is often a problem. And a lot of the destructive men in her life, whether it was her father, whether it was boyfriends or husbands that she's had, have tried to hinder and limit the use of her voice. Something I've often talked about is how a powerful woman who uses her voice in a powerful way, something that's going to do is it's going to challenge the inauthenticity in men. It's going to shine a light on the areas in men where they need to heal. And when a powerful woman shines a light on an area in a man where he needs to heal and he's not ready to see that, he's going to tell her to shut up. He's going to call her difficult. He's going to tell her that she's being a problem. A lot of us have seen this with our mothers and our fathers, right? A lot of us have seen how our fathers would treat our mothers when they would try to speak up. A lot of us have experienced this in our own marriages or our own relationships. And so her ability to be authentic, her ability to use her voice, and alongside of that is her ability to be vulnerable, right? Because authenticity, especially for a woman, I mean, authenticity is vulnerable for everybody. There's no doubt about it. But especially for a woman who is subject to so much criticism in this world when she uses her voice, being authentic is incredibly vulnerable. And I've often spoken about how, we tend to think as vulnerability, we tend to think of vulnerability as weakness, but vulnerability is actually an incredible strength. And we've been taught that to be vulnerable is to be weak. But when you think about how much courage is really required to be vulnerable, to put yourself in a position where you might be judged, you might be ridiculed, you might be shamed, you might be put down, and then to have the courage and the resilience to do it anyway, that's an incredible strength. You see, so many of us, men and women, have spent our lives kind of tiptoeing around, not wanting to be vulnerable because we didn't want to subject ourselves to the shame and the ridicule that would come from that vulnerability. And the true amazing human beings, both men and women, are the ones who have the capacity to be vulnerable. The ones who have the capacity to say the thing that might be uncomfortable for someone else, to reveal the thing about themselves that they might be judged for, to share an opinion that people might disagree with. Right? So vulnerability is an incredible strength. And this is why one of the essential qualities of a conscious woman is the ability to be authentic and the ability to be vulnerable. And her being authentic is vulnerable. Because it would be so much easier for her to do what she's been trained to do and people please and pander and make sure everyone else is happy and make sure everyone likes her and make sure she's getting all the validation she needs. It would be so much easier for her to do that. And I think, in the stage of our current human evolution where we are, and this isn't new, this has been happening for a long time, but, it's like we saw the women gaining the right to vote, I don't know, 40, 50 years ago, something like that. Right. And we've seen, women's like the Me Too movement. And there's something that's happening in our culture right now where women are starting to take charge of their own rights, to take charge of their own voice, to call out some of the toxic masculinity that has kept them silent and kept them unsafe for, eons. And I think something that it's essential for this to happen at this stage of our evolution. By the way, I just want to say we have a female candidate for president in the US right now with a strong possibility that she could win. And that's a sign of the times. Right? That's a sign of where we are in our world right now. And so something that's happening as an essential part of our collective evolution is women stepping into this authenticity and this vulnerability, willing to break free of the societal roles that they've been forced into for eons, for generations. And what that's doing as they do that is they shine a light on the masculine inauthenticity. Not to shame it or to judge it, but to bring it to the surface so that it can be healed. Right? This is something this happens on an individual level in partnership, and this happens on a collective level. I think the Me Too movement was such an incredible thing when women started calling out all of this sexual abuse that had been happening for years and years and years, and no one had said anything about it. And to a large degree, the culture wasn't even aware of it because it had been happening behind closed doors. And now that it's been brought out into the open, it's been called out. I mean, it's not that it doesn't happen at all anymore, but there's a different collective awareness about it. And this is what the healed feminine does. The healed feminine shines that light on the areas that need to be healed. And this happens in individual partnership, and this happens in our collective. And so authenticity and vulnerability, right? Her willingness to be courageously honest, her willingness to say that uncomfortable thing, to call out that inauthenticity, her willingness to live in alignment with her truth. Going back to something I said earlier, is that willingness to create boundaries, that willingness to say where the line is, to say that this is not okay for me. This is not okay in our society anymore. So that's number 3, authenticity and vulnerability. Number 4 is intuition and inner wisdom. And I spoke a little bit about this earlier, is that the feminine is more connected to the spiritual than the masculine is, just naturally. The masculine is more connected to the physical. There's a lot of conversation about how the masculine should be the leaders. And I think that is sometimes taken out of context because we both have different gifts and we both have a different capacity to lead in different ways. I think the masculine is very good at leading in certain ways, especially when it comes to dealing with physical reality. The masculine is more decisive, able to make like a split-second decision. Right? The masculine is able to protect and provide and defend. And like there are certain gifts that the masculine has that make them attuned to lead in certain ways. But I think the feminine, and this is something that our society has historically not honored, not cherished. But the feminine is like bringing through information from spirit. You know, the feminine has a deep connection to, like, let me put it this way. The masculine is really good at dealing with like short-sighted things, right? Where it's like, okay, this is what's happening right here and right now. A decision needs to be made. We need to do this. The masculine thrives in that kind of environment. But that masculine ability is kind of short-sighted. Whereas the feminine is tuned into the whole of everything, right? She's more connected to how all parts work together. She's more connected to the subtleties. She's more connected to the consequences of an action. She's more connected to how making this decision in this moment is going to affect the whole, is going to affect everyone involved. Right? There's a larger awareness. And so she's not as skilled at making a split-second decision, like, boom, okay, this needs to happen in this moment, boom, let's do it. That's a masculine thing. The feminine needs time to really tune into her intuition, to her inner wisdom, to feel into how all things are connected, to feel into how this part's going to affect this part's going to affect this part's, how the collaboration and the cooperation of everything is going to work together. And so that's her gift. And that's where she can lead. And so she trusts her inner voice. And I think this is something that, you know, as I've spoken about kind of the wounded masculine, when a woman would be speaking from her intuition and she would say, I don't think that's a good idea, or maybe we should do this instead, or this doesn't sit right with me. And the wounded masculine, rather than hearing that, would be like, why are you being a problem? Why are you causing problems? Why can't you just chill? Why can't you just relax? And so her ability to trust her inner voice, again, that's something that she has to develop and learn because of how much that has been stamped down throughout her life. How much she's been called crazy when she follows her intuition. How much she's been called a problem. How much she's been put down for it. So her learning to trust her inner voice, her learning to tune in to that deep place inside of herself, combined with her ability to listen to what she finds there and then speak it authentically. And that's something that the feminine can do in a way that the masculine cannot or often does not. I think the feminine's ability to get there is much more natural than the masculine's ability. she is naturally more spiritually inclined. A lot of people say, what was I going to say? I lost my train of thought there. I was talking about how she is spiritually inclined, and damn, I had a point there I really wanted to address. I totally lost it. But what I'm getting at here is that she is really tuned into her spiritual nature in a way that the masculine is not. And in this sense, she can be a spiritual leader. In this sense, she can be a spiritual guide. Oh, this is what I was going to say, is a lot of people ask why there are more women doing healing work than men. A lot of people ask, why are all these, programs full of women, but not men? And again, I don't even think that's necessarily true. I think there are a lot of programs for men and a lot of programs for women. And I think there are different conversations, and a conversation that appeals to women more is going to attract more women, and a conversation that appeals to men more is going to attract more men. But that being said, I do think women have a natural inclination towards spiritual growth and towards healing that men don't necessarily have. And this is what I mean by it. Men will heal when there is a problem in their life that is great enough that it forces them to heal. Women, I think, are more inclined to heal just because they're more in touch with their own wounds and they crave the healing for its own sake. And that's a kind of spiritual awareness that I think comes natural to the feminine and is not natural for the masculine. A lot of times, and I think one of the ways that women lead men to healing is in relationships when a man is in love with a woman. And I think a man, when he is in love, when he's committed, when he's dedicated, he'll do anything for that relationship. He'll do anything for that woman. And so when a man is in relationship with a woman and there are problems in the relationship, it's often the woman who invites him to heal together. And in that sense, she will lead the healing, whether that's like she's going to book a call with a therapist, or she's going to sign them up for some kind of program, or whatever form it takes. But she can lead the healing because she's more connected to what the wound is. So number 4, intuition and inner wisdom. And again, I think this is something that women have to break free of a certain amount of conditioning that tells them not to trust their intuition, that tells them they're crazy, that tells them they're a problem, that tells them they're being difficult. And they have to really learn to trust and to validate that subtle voice inside of themselves that guides them to their highest truth. Now, the last one I want to talk about, this is the 5th point I'm talking about in the essential qualities of a conscious woman, is personal empowerment and support for others. Something that is often talked about in terms of the feminine wound is how women tear each other down. And I know a lot of you ladies have experienced this, potentially even done it at times in your life. Right? The wounded feminine is very inclined to tear other women down and men down. And I think it's important to address kind of where this comes from and why this happens. And it happens because she has been trained, and I talked about this at the beginning. She has been trained to, what was I going to say? She has been trained to place her worthiness and her validation externally. And this is what I was talking about at the beginning. This is kind of the core feminine wound, right? Where she's been taught to people please. She's been taught to pander. She's been taught to play in to the expectations of others. She's been taught to do all of this. And so because she's been taught to do all of this, and she's been taught that her value is external, this leads to a kind of competition between her and other women and men. Where if her validation is external, if she needs the approval from this person and that person and all of this in order to survive, that means there's only a certain amount of validation that can go around. And if someone else is getting it, then I'm not getting it. And so this gives rise to a lot of the ways that women will tear each other down in their woundedness. And then also as a result, the ways that they tear men down. Because they feel disempowered, needing this validation from men, needing this validation from the external world. And so as a retaliation against that disempowerment that they feel, they attack. Now, as a woman heals and she develops her own internal security, her own ability to stand in her own right on her own 2 feet, where she's no longer seeking that validation from the external world, but she's validating herself internally. And she's learned to let go of a lot of the pandering and the, attention and things that she was getting that were boosting her wounded self-esteem. And she's learned to kind of release some of that and be okay without it. What comes naturally is her ability to empower and support others. And also to support herself. Right? So as she becomes more comfortable and more natural at supporting herself, that natural expression is to support others. That natural expression is to lift others up. She supports healthy relationships. And I know a lot of you might feel that there's a lot of emotional labor on your part. A lot of you might feel that it's exhausting. And what I want to say is, I get that, but the world is exhausted. It's not just you who feels that way. It's everybody who feels that way. And so what this becomes is, are you going to be completely defeated by your exhaustion? Or are you going to embrace the natural gifts that you have to empower and to heal and to support? And I know that's not easy, but none of this is easy. And I think even, in the conversation of why do women have to do more of the emotional labor than men do? Well, I think we both do the labor in different ways. I don't think it's that women do it more than men do, but I think women are connected differently than men are. And so women have a different role in it than men do. And, here's the thing, and I've talked about this a lot, and I think, we all as individuals, we need to elevate our awareness about this a little bit. Because it's not that, men did it or women did it, or men are the problem or women are the problem, or women are more healed or men are more healed, or women are more sick or men are more sick. This is the thing. Whatever we're dealing with in today's world here in 2024, whatever we're dealing with in today's world started centuries ago. This is a generational trauma that has been passed down for centuries. So whoever you're pointing the finger at, whatever man or woman or whoever that you're pointing the finger at right now and saying they're the problem and it's not my responsibility, whoever you're pointing the finger at, they inherited it in the same way you did. And as I started talking about today, men have inherited a certain amount of wounding and women have inherited a certain amount of wounding. And because of the cultural dynamics and the world that we were raised in and the trauma that we inherited, that wounding shows up for men in a certain way. And that wounding shows up for women in a certain way. And so if you're wondering, like, why is it up for women to carry more of the emotional weight? Well, here's just the simple fact of the matter. And I'm not excusing men at all. Men have their own healing to do. But here's the simple fact of the matter is that the wounds that we have all inherited here in 2024, the wounds that started centuries ago and have been passed down from generation to generation to generation, the way those wounds have played out is that it has made men emotionally stunted. I'm not saying there aren't men out there who are incredibly emotionally attuned and emotionally available. There are. I'd like to think I'm one of them. I'm not saying that there aren't those men out there, but what I'm saying is men as a whole, the generational wounding that they've inherited leads to a kind of emotional stuntedness. Whereas in this generational pattern that's been handed down for centuries, women have been given permission to be more in tune with their emotions. There's a general cultural acceptance of a woman being emotional that is not there for men. Now, is this changing? Yes, this is changing. Here in today's world in 2024, there is a huge call for men to become more emotionally attuned, and men are becoming more emotionally attuned. It is happening, but it doesn't happen overnight. And here in 2024 and where we are right now, women have a greater emotional capacity than men do. That's why they are the leaders in that domain. That's why it is often a woman who will lead a man to his heart. Now, you can say that's unfair. It is. Life is unfair. If you were a man, or for the men who are listening to this, there are unfair aspects on the other side too. But the fact is, every single human being on the planet right now is living with a certain generational trauma that we've all inherited. And every individual, be you a man or a woman. So I'm not talking to men right now, or I'm not talking to women. I'm talking to you who's hearing this message. Every single individual has one choice. Are you going to take responsibility for the generational trauma that we've all inherited and be your best possible self to bring about healing in this world? Or are you going to be a victim to it? Are you going to say it's too hard, it's too unfair, I'm too exhausted, and you're going to contribute to the problem? And that is a choice that every single individual on the planet has to make for themselves. I get it's hard. I'm doing the work every day. I'm not only doing the work with myself and with my marriage, I'm also guiding thousands of people in the work. I get that it's hard. But if I got up and I said, this is too hard, it's too unfair, I'm too exhausted, then I wouldn't be here right now sharing this message. And so it doesn't really matter that it's unfair. It doesn't really matter if sometimes you're doing more of the work, other times you're doing less of the work. It doesn't really matter. The only thing that matters is who you choose to be within the circumstances of your life and the circumstances of the world. And last week I spoke about the path of becoming a conscious man and the essential qualities of being a conscious man. This week, I'm talking about the essential qualities of being a conscious woman. And women have certain gifts and attunements and opportunities in this world, in this day and age, in 2024, that men don't have. Men have other gifts, other opportunities, based on the different wounding, based on the different social conditioning that we've all been through. So this point number 5 is empowerment and support for others. Women are particularly attuned to lead with love and compassion, whereas men have often been trained to lead with domination and force. Women are particularly attuned to support healthy relationships. They're more cooperative and relational in nature. So these are the 5 qualities. I'm just going to quickly recap what I've spoken about today. First one is self-love and worthiness. The second one is emotional intelligence and attunement. The third one is authenticity and vulnerability. The fourth one is intuition and inner wisdom. And the fifth one is empowerment personally and support for others. These are the 5 essential qualities of a conscious woman, based on the unique position that women are in this world, based on their unique wounds that they experience in our cultures, based on their unique gifts and natural attunements. These are the qualities that a conscious woman embodies to bring about the best in her relationships, to bring about the best in her life, and to bring about the best in our world. Now, I've seen a lot of talk in the comments. I haven't been able to read all the comments, but I know there was a lot happening there. So I want to go back. I want to read through these comments. I want to take some questions today. So if you have questions, go ahead, drop them in the chat. I'll take as many questions as I can. So Trust the Path brings up an interesting question. I'm happy to speak about this. She says, I know this is off topic, but would be great to hear your insight. How does the current conversation about Diddy relate to where we are consciously? I mean, look, Diddy is another Epstein. He's another Weinstein. He's another version of this. I spoke earlier about how where we are today and the fact that, women have been speaking out about a certain string of abuse that has been happening for a long time, but it was often happening in the shadows. It was often happening behind closed doors. It was happening again by a lot of this has been perpetrated by very powerful people, men in positions of power. And a lot of it was not known to the public. And I think we are in a day and age where, and if you look at astrologically, if you look at what's happening with, and I'm not an expert astrologer, but, I know that like Pluto's going through some major transits right now, and the energy of Pluto is about bringing the darkness into the light, right? Like Pluto is Lord of the underworld. And so where we are in our evolutionary development in our world right now is about facing our collective shadow. And that happens individually, right? So a lot of what I teach in my work and the content I post is about us as individuals facing our shadows, facing the masculine and feminine wounding and really healing through that. But as we do that on an individual level, that is also reflected to us collectively. And so we've seen things like Epstein be exposed. We're seeing Diddy be exposed right now, right? So these are the parts of our collective that were hidden in shadow that are now coming into the light. And we're developing a certain consciousness as a planet right now where we're saying these things are not okay. Not that we said it was okay before, but there was like, again, it was hidden in shadow, right? So it was like, what I don't know can't hurt me. And so we were willing to kind of allow these things to take place in secret. In the same way, if I were to draw a parallel here, it's the same way that we ignore our own personal wounding, right? So we might have patterns in relationship that are destructive, that stem from our wounding, but we're not aware of it. And rather than becoming aware of it, we just allow these patterns to perpetuate in our relationships. And, maybe we go through 5 divorces and we say, oh, well, it was always the other person's fault. And I just had bad luck with partners, right? Never looking at ourselves. Well, a lot of people did that. I mean, we're in an age of healing right now where all of this information is becoming mainstream. But a lot of people have done that throughout history. Right? Not really looking at ourselves, not really looking in the mirror, but we've been just, blaming others or being victims to our situation. Well, we're doing that individually right now, and we're doing it collectively. I think a lot of our political landscape is reflecting that. I think a lot of the global issues that we're seeing is reflecting that. And I think things like Diddy are reflecting that. Right? Here's a man who's been perpetrating these kinds of things for decades. He's been, not held accountable. He's been allowed to kind of do whatever he wants to whoever he wants. And now he's being exposed the same way that Epstein was exposed and Weinstein was exposed, and the same way that so many men who have been doing these kinds of things are being exposed and are being held accountable. This is our society and our culture facing its shadow, facing the things that have been kept in darkness and deciding, we as a people, what are we going to allow and what are we not? As we continue down this path, it's going to get to a point where there's nothing in shadow anymore, where everything is all right out in the open. We've seen this with I think like the gay and the trans movement, which has been very progressive and is getting more and more progressive, right? But these were things that used to happen in like secret. These were things that people used to hide. And now it's like right out there and it's open. I think it's a great thing. But like people are like, if somebody was trans, like that was something they used to have to hide. Like they might literally be killed if they were to express that. And now they're free to express that in our world. They're free to walk around and be the person they want to be in our world. And so these are the kinds of things that as we confront our shadow, as we confront the aspects of ourselves individually and the aspects of ourselves as a collective that have been hidden, and all these things start to come out into the open, and our society is given an opportunity to deal with it. There's a big argument, like if I use the gay and the trans example, right? There's a big argument about it. Some people think it's good. Some people think it's bad. And that's something that was kept in shadow. It was kept hidden. Now it's coming into the light. And now our society is having to come to terms with how we're going to deal with it. If we look at our collective as one being, right? If we look at our collective global world as one consciousness, or even a country as one consciousness, right? Then it's a similar process to how you might find something in yourself that makes you uncomfortable. And then you have to come to terms with accepting that part of yourself. Well, we've shined a light on certain people in our society that make certain people uncomfortable. And now we as a collective are having to come to terms with accepting that part of ourselves. This is the process of healing, and it's messy. Like, it's not clean. It's not neat. It's messy. But ultimately, the end result of all of this is we get to a place where, these kinds of people like Epstein or Diddy are not allowed to exist anymore. Where people feel safe enough when something like this happens to them to speak up about it and trust that our society is going to come to their aid and their defense. Where people who are gay or trans or whatever feel the freedom to express and authentically be who they are, and trust that our society is going to support and uphold their authenticity. And we're headed towards that. But this is the process of getting there, and it's a messy process. So it's a great question. I really appreciate the question. And yeah, it's a messy one. But this is what we're doing here. This is all a part of the healing journey. Okay, so this question is from Matt Lurie Sophie. How do you help a man emotionally grow in a wise way without being too responsible or involved? So to not take responsibility, but to be a wise feminine energy. Yes, this is a great question. And I think, it really comes down to simply expressing your truth, honoring your boundaries, being willing to walk away when the relationship shows you again and again that it won't rise to the occasion. So I think, and I just want to say this for everybody, I think one of the most important lessons a woman can give a man is leaving him. And I see this from a lot of women where they'll hang on and they'll believe in him and they'll work for him and they'll try to make him better and they'll do everything they can. And that's a woman's wounding that does that. That is not a healed woman that does that. Right. So in her wounding, she believes I can save him. I can make him better. Look, I've spoken about this today, and I'll say it many, many times, is that women do have the ability to make men better. And I think to a degree, men have the ability to make women better. We make each other better. But nobody makes anybody better by enabling their destructive behavior. So sometimes as a woman in relationship with a man, the way that you make him better is to leave him and let him learn the lesson of losing you. And that's hard because that's also a big lesson for the woman usually too. Right. And so where some of the things I've been talking about today with some of the feminine wounds are to get that external security, that external validation. And so often when she stays with a man, when he's not rising the occasion, he's not meeting her needs, he's not being the man that she needs in her life, but she stays with him and stays with him and stays with him, she's often playing into her own wounding because she is hoping that if she stays long enough and she works hard enough and she tries hard enough, that he's eventually going to be the man that she needs him to be. And he's going to give her that external security and validation that she's looking for. Her willingness to leave him is a healing step for him because she says, I'm not going to accept this anymore. You're not who I need you to be. I can't keep enabling your destructive behavior. I'm going to leave. And that is a huge lesson for him that could catalyze his healing when he sits back and goes, holy shit, I lost an amazing woman. Right? That could definitely catalyze his healing. But what it's also going to do is it's also going to catalyze her healing because she's letting go of her attachment to the validation and the security and the attention and everything that she got from him. And so as she lets go of all of that she was getting from him, she is now forced to reinforce her own security, her own validation, to learn to stand on her own 2 feet, to learn to not need that as much. And so it's a mutually healing experience for both of them. But I'll acknowledge this. Often she's a little bit further along in her healing journey than he is, which is why she has to make the decision to leave. Because if she leaves it up to him, he'll just keep taking and taking and taking and taking and taking. Now, there's all kinds of nuance. Every situation is a little bit different. But to go back to the question, I think it's important that you are in touch with what you need and honoring your truth. that you're communicating, that you're asking for what you need, that you're challenging the inauthenticity in the relationship, that you're creating the boundaries that need to be created. And if after a certain period of time of you doing all of this, you honoring your truth, you speaking your mind, you creating these boundaries, if the relationship doesn't rise to the occasion, then you leave. That's how you do it. In very clear, practical, straightforward terms. So sending a lot of love, Sophie. I know that's a challenging path, and I don't know exactly where you are right now or exactly what your situation is, but I know that's a challenging path. And again, start by boundaries, speaking your truth, honoring your truth, challenging the relationship. And at a certain point, if it doesn't rise to the occasion, you need to accept that there's something better for you. And that your next step of growth is to let it go. So sending a lot of love to you. I hope that supports. I really do. I hope that supports you. Okay, so Shali Hunt is asking, are there any sure signs that your energy matches with a man? No, there aren't. And the reason I say that, there are sure signs of quality, right? So, and like, let me put it this way. If you're starting to get to know someone and he's being consistent, he's making the effort, he's pursuing you, he's showing genuine interest, he's calling when he says he's going to call, he's taking you out when he says he's going to take you out, he's saying, hey, I want to see you again, when can I see you, right? Like in the very early stages, those are some of the best signs that he is sincerely interested, that his interest is consistent, that he's doing what he says he's going to do, that he's not wavering. Those are some of the best signs. And if you have a man who shows up for you like that, and you reward that, and when I say reward that, I mean like you show up for him, right? You let him take you out. You like encourage him and you tell him you're enjoying it and you're saying, thank you so much. And you're saying, I really appreciate you doing this. And I really enjoy our time together. And I'm really looking forward to seeing you again as well. Right. And you're encouraging and rewarding that behavior. That's going to carry you through the first couple of months. So that's like the best you can hope for in the beginning. And if that's there, those are sure signs. I'll say that. Those are sure signs. But what I want to say is after that kind of honeymoon phase wears off in the first few months, the two of you are going to need some work together. You're going to start seeing different sides of him. He's going to see different sides of you. Certain wounds are going to come up. You're going to need to have some deeper conversations. You're going to figure out, how do we deal with conflict? You're going to figure out, is one more avoidant? Is one more anxious? How do these things show up? How do we communicate? Right. And I always say this, like, there's no magic pill. There's no like, oh, these are the magic signs of like, we're connected, we're soulmates. We're going to like, that doesn't happen. That happens in movies. That doesn't happen in real life. What happens in real life is you meet someone. Best case scenario, you have a magnetic connection. You hit it off really well, and that carries you for a couple of months. And as you transition out of that honeymoon phase and you start living real life together, and you start seeing the sides of each other that you don't see in the very beginning, you learn how to navigate conflict together. You learn how to have real conversations. You learn how to ask for the things you want. You gauge their ability to meet your needs. You do your best to meet their needs and so forth. And if you can make it through about a year with this person, and you can feel really good, like, wow, in this year, like, yeah, we had some challenges, but we came through them strong. We've deepened our connection. We've deepened our relationship. We've deepened our communication. We really care about each other. We're really dedicated to working on this relationship and having it work. If that's how you feel after a year, that bodes really well for your future. And if the two of you continue showing up like that year after year after year, you'll probably live happily ever after. But there's no like magic sign that like, oh, this is my soulmate. Oh, it's going to work out. The only way to get there with someone is by doing the work. And this requires, last thing I'll say about it, this requires you as an individual, Shali, really learning to be comfortable living in that gray area of, like, okay, I met a man, it's great, it's going well, but I don't know exactly where it's going. I don't know how long it's going to last. And you really being able to be secure as you navigate this. One of the biggest mistakes that I think particularly women make, and men do it too sometimes, but I think women do it more than men do, is that you meet someone, you really like them, you feel really good about it, and you attach. And that sets you up for trouble. That just sets you up for trouble. So the thing is, you meet someone, you like them, you feel really good about it, and you say, okay, this is promising. Maybe it'll work out, maybe it won't. I'm open to see where it goes. I'm going to show up as my best self. Maybe you pray for the relationship. You're like, this is a good person. I pray for what's right for both of us. If that's to be together, wonderful. If it's to go our separate ways, I'm okay with that too. But, guide me and show me how to be my best self in this relationship for as long as it lasts. And it really takes about a year before you have enough information to say, like, this is someone I could see myself spending my life with. So sending love, Shali. I hope that helps you. All right, I'm going to take this last question from Kat. She says, how do I resist being a chaser when my soul craves a connection? How can I start healing? It's so overwhelming. I don't know where to start. And this speaks into exactly what I was saying about attaching very quickly, right? And then when we attach, we start chasing. So Kat, I'm going to give you a very simple answer here. You need to learn to regulate your emotion. You need to learn to regulate your emotional experience. And so when you get that feeling of wanting to chase, you say your soul craves a connection. I want to say something here. I think your soul does crave connection. All of our souls crave connection. But what you are saying when you say your soul craves a connection is not a soul connection. That's a wound speaking. That is a kind of emptiness that you feel inside that you're hoping to fill with a relationship. Yes, we all crave connection on our soul level. We all do. But connection can be found in so many ways, from so many different kinds of relationship, from so many different kinds of people. Connection can be found with ourselves. We can be deeply connected to ourselves, and that can get us through a lonely night. And so when you say my soul is craving a connection, what you're talking about is a wound, a feeling of emptiness, a feeling that I don't matter without someone else loving me or wanting me. This is a trained, wounded behavior in which you've learned to derive your identity and sense of self through the attention you get from other people. And what you need to do, so you ask, how do you start your healing? The way you start your healing is by learning to feel that wound, to feel the presence and the reality of that wound without reaching out for someone to try to fix it. Without going outside of yourself. And so if I were to give you really practical advice, and again, I think if you want to join the challenge, it'd be amazing for us to work on this together. To give you really practical advice, the next time you feel like you want to chase, the next time you feel yourself desperately needing that person's attention or their presence or whatever that is for you, you resist the temptation to pick up your phone and call them or reach out or do anything external. And you say, I'm just going to sit with this feeling and I'm going to try to feel it fully. You see, what's happening here is that same feeling that you have that makes you want to chase. You had that feeling a long time ago, sometime in childhood. And you learned as a survival response to reach out for external validation to soothe that feeling. And you've been doing it ever since. And so you've spent your whole life escaping that feeling or trying to escape that feeling because when you were a child, maybe you reached out to your mother or your father or in some other way, and that's where you found your soothing. And, that's a wonderful thing as a child for you to reach out to a parent, for them to love you and hold you. And I don't know if that happened for you, but it's a wonderful thing to be able to offer our children that security and that validation. But something we also need to teach our children to do, and this is something that our parents did not teach us, is we need to teach our children to sit with discomfort, to feel their emotions fully. And again, I don't know if that's exactly what happened for you, Kat. That could have shown up in different ways. I'm not saying that's the only way that can happen. But my point is that a long time ago, you felt this feeling and you started reaching out for external validation to escape that feeling. And you've been doing that ever since. And so what you need to learn now at this stage of your life is to really truly feel that feeling, to allow yourself to be with that feeling and to find comfort in it. And as you do that, you will start to heal. And you will start to know that when you feel that, you don't have to chase. And you'll become more empowered in your relationships. You'll become more discerning. Lots of love, Kat. That's a beautiful question. It's a beautiful question. Sending you so much love. This question is from Dr. Shalini Nidahish. She asks, love is unconditional, but relationships are conditional. So true love is not possible in all relationships? Okay, this is a great question, and I want to address this because, this is such a good question. Love does not come from relationships. Love comes from you. Relationships have to be conditional to a certain degree. If my wife came home today and she's like, I want to cut your head off, I would have to say no. Right? So relationships have to, my wife would never do that, by the way, but relationships have to be conditional to a certain degree because we can't just let anyone else do whatever they want to us. But there is a difference between loving unconditionally and the behavior that we have in relationships. So I'm just going to use that example. Again, my wife would never do this. She's the sweetest, kindest, most loving person. I'm just going to use this example. If my wife came home today and she tried to cut my head off, I would have to say no. I would have to stop her. I would have to create a boundary. Like, no, sorry, you can't cut my head off. That would be a condition on our relationship, right? No, anything doesn't go. I can use a more realistic example, right? What am I thinking of? Sometimes at night, we'll give each other space if I want to watch TV and she wants to read her book, and we won't bother each other, right? We won't try to get attention from each other while we're doing our separate things at night. That's a condition in our relationship because we want to unwind. We want to do our thing. So we're going to give each other that space. If I was trying to get all kinds of attention from her while she's trying to read her book, she might not be able to unwind and get to bed at a certain time, right? So there's a condition in our relationship. But I can love her even though there are those conditions. My capacity to love, let's just go back to the example. If she tried to cut my head off, if she tried to cut my head off, I would probably need to have her committed to some kind of asylum. That's the most extreme example. But even if something that extreme were to happen with somebody, let's say somebody tried to kill you. You could do what you need to do in terms of having that person arrested, having them committed, having them put away, whatever needs to be done. You could do whatever needs to be done and still love them. Because love does not come from other people. Love comes from you. And love is not dependent on what happens in a relationship. A really practical example of this is like you have an ex who broke your heart. Maybe they cheated on you. Maybe they lied to you and cheated on you, right? And you say, I can't be in a relationship with someone who's going to lie and cheat on me. And so you ended the relationship. You can still love that person. You can still understand the wounding in which that person was living. You can have empathy and compassion for why they did what they did, even though you had to make some conditions. So you say love cannot be experienced in relationships. Love can be experienced in every relationship. I don't speak to my father anymore for a lot of reasons that I'm not going to go into. But I love him. Whenever I think about him, I send him love. You can experience love in every single relationship, past, present, future. Because love doesn't come from those relationships, and it's not determined by the things that happen or don't happen in those relationships. It's a way that you choose to live in relationship to yourself, other people, and life as a whole. And the more completely loving that you become, and this is why I wanted to answer this question, is because this is probably the most essential thing of everything I teach. The more wholly loving that you become, meaning I love everyone and everything all the time, no matter what they did, no matter how they hurt me, no matter how their wounding might be playing out, I still offer them love even when I need to create a boundary. The more wholly loving you become, the more your life is filled with love. Meaning you attract loving relationships. You attract joyful experiences. You have good, heart-centered friends. The more wholly loving you become, the more your life becomes filled with love. The more you hold judgment and criticism, and the more you give yourself reasons why you can't love people, the more you withhold forgiveness from people who have hurt you, the less loving your life becomes. And so you continue to attract relationships that are filled with conflict and friends who aren't real friends and drama and chaos and all of that. Because it's all reflecting you and the amount of love that you embody as an individual. So much love to everybody. I love all of you. Let me put that out there. I love all of you. I love your questions. I love you being with me today, and thank you so much. It's always a pleasure and a privilege to be on here. That was a great question. I'm grateful I could answer it. So much love and blessings to all of you. Thank you for being with me today. I'll be back here next Tuesday, 12 p.m. Eastern Time. This is the Conscious Love Show podcast. Make sure to subscribe on all major platforms, and I'll see everybody then. Take care. Have a great rest of your week. Bye-bye. Thanks again for checking out the show. Please subscribe on whatever platform you listen to podcasts on the most. And I would love it so much if you leave a review and tell people what you think of us. Don't forget to follow us on Instagram @TheLivingRelationship to connect more closely. And I'm grateful to be supporting you on your journey to love.